Watch this.
The ACLU of Idaho is calling out the Nampa School District for discrimination against their Hispanic students. They filed a federal complaint over dress codes.
I mean, we're looking at having to ship these in from either Vegas or Los Angeles, and it's the actual cost, bulk of it is shipping them up here and back.
A late added cost for the organizers of the Boise Pride Festival over a somewhat late decision over lighting up the Capitol. Well, it's a policy that's actually been in place for like 8 years, but it hasn't actually been consistently enforced until now. Hollywood might not be writing right now, but that isn't stopping playwrights from showcasing their work at the Boise BIPOC Playwright Festival, which is a good thing because they have a lot to say. Nampa School District is at the center of a new complaint filed by the ACLU, and it's a very serious claim, one that points at the discrimination of Latino and Hispanic students. Joe Paris here to detail that complaint, and he also has, well, how Nampa School District is responding to these accusations. Joe?
Well, Brian, just this afternoon, the ACLU filed a complaint with the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and they did this on behalf of Latino and Hispanic students in the Nampa School District that they say are impacted by discriminatory dress codes and discipline policies in the Nampa School District. So the 19-page complaint highlights what the ACLU believes are violations of Title IV of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the complaint outlines dress code and gang activity policies in the Nampa School District that the ACLU says are vague and undefined. They add that the policies target Latino and Hispanic students. And the argument is that clothing and other items listed in policy are related to ethnicities and culture, not gangs or illegal activity. An example for you that's in the complaint, we'll take a look at this together. Quote, Nampa School District's gang and gang activity policy states that students cannot wear, possess, use, distribute, or sell any clothing, jewelry, emblem, badge, symbol, sign, or any other item which is evidence of membership in or affiliation with any gang. Well, the complaint continues. Nampa School District policy does not define specific clothing or symbols prohibited, define gang, or how, for example, an article of clothing would be interpreted as evidence of gang affiliation. It also goes on to say that the Nampa School District enforces an informal no rosaries policy as an example, at least in some of its schools, including at Lone Star Middle and South Middle School, which the complaint outlines you don't usually associate rosaries with gangs. Now, under pseudonyms, these stories of unfair treatment, over-the-top punishments, and hostile environments are described in the complaint. So the claim here is that cultural items and attire are being construed to be strictly gang-related. And that ends up in what the ACLU is calling a discrepancy in discipline practices based on students' heritage. I reached out to the Nampa School District for a response, and they are aware of the complaint and are awaiting advice from legal counsel. But they did share with me their thoughts on the ACLU report on all of this that actually came out a few weeks ago. And they said in response to all of that, quote, the recent report published by the ACLU has brought attention to the complex issue of gang activity and violence in schools. Gangs and their history of violence have posed significant challenges to our district and community for many years. The statement continues, we want to emphasize that at no point have we endorsed or supported any practices that discriminate against any of our students. The Nampa School District continues to strive for excellence for all students, including our Hispanic and Latinx students and families. Bottom line, Brian, the complaint here is calling for an investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division into Nampa School District. And Nampa still waiting for legal advice on this one.
And all this legal action, of course, stems from what happened, I think, back in January, right? When some students are wearing a Brown Pride T-shirts, or several of them wearing Brown Pride T-shirts, a couple of them suspended because of that. And then white power ended up being spray painted on the school walls. This has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, and that saga that was back in January that you're touching on, certainly a part of this. But as the complaint highlights and students in the Nampa School District highlight, this goes well past this year, going back.
Going further back. All right, thank you very much, Joe. Meanwhile, the West Bonner County School District, they held an emergency meeting last night. As trustee Margaret Hall put it, an emergency of their own creation. They called this meeting after the Idaho State Board of Education sent them a letter explaining why the district was out of compliance with state requirements and how their new superintendent, that'd be former Idaho Freedom Foundation staff member Brandon Durst, how he was unqualified to be superintendent in the state of Idaho. They also outlined the ways the district was not complying with what is required by the state, from the budget not being balanced, to the buses not being properly inspected, to a failure to apply for federal funding. So the district held last night's meeting to declare an emergency, to direct Durst to apply for an emergency provisional certificate and to have him reply to the state board's letter with a plan to fix their compliance issues. Not everyone on the council felt like Durst, though, should be the one to write that letter.
I need clarifications. I think before that letter goes in tomorrow that the full board should see a copy of it, of that response. It should not wait until our next meeting. I do not want to abdicate my role as board member to Superintendent or Mr. Durst to apply to the State Board of Education. It should be from the board. The State Board of Education sent that letter to us.
I second that and agree.
Well, the meeting lasted all of 16 minutes. All three motions passed by a vote of 3-1, with Trustee Hall voting against all of them. Trustee Carolyn Barton, she abstained from voting last night, saying anything they decide should have been null and void because there wasn't a 24-hour notice before that meeting. Failure to comply with the state requirements could mean a loss of funding for the already cash-strapped district. State Board gave West Bonner County until today to respond to those compliance requirements. Trustee Hall told us she expected those to be turned in. She told me today she got a look at that letter and the plans. As she said, she made some suggestions and she fully expects that to be turned in. The emergency provision then will have to be approved by the State Board of Education. Boise Pride Festival sent out a media release yesterday, kind of highlighting what attendees can expect, asking for volunteers, laying out the schedule for the 3-day event at Cecil D. Andrus Park. There was a part put in the middle of that release that was titled, "Help Us Light the Capitol Building Again." Organizers were asking for help to pay for splashing rainbow-colored lights across the front of the Capitol, and they claimed they were all set to do it like they've been doing it the last couple of years, or at least the way they did it last year, by bringing in their own lights, positioning them below the building, and then lighting up the State House. And they had the funds already paid for. They say they're just weeks ago, though, they were told, well, that can't happen. No lights on the Capitol grounds. They can set them up across the street, but that would require different lights, more expensive lights. So now, what they thought would cost about $5,000 is now 3 times as much to light up the Capitol. Last year, they were allowed on the grounds, so not this year. So what's changed? Well, actually, the policy has changed a few times over the years. Lighting up the Capitol, I should say, with rainbow colors hasn't always been a part of Boise Pride, but it has been a tradition for at least the last several years. Let's go back to June of 2016. While the LGBTQ+ community and its allies were still processing the mass killing in an Orlando gay nightclub just days prior to the Boise Pride Fest, Boise Pride organizers asked to change the lights outside the State House to honor the victims and celebrate the festival weekend. They were told then by the Department of Administration Director Robert Geddes, yeah, it's kind of controversial, and our lights, well, they don't do that anyway. So they could project their own lights onto the building if they wanted to, which would have cost them about $9,000. But then in June of 2018, about 10 days after the Boise Pride Festival that year, when they were allowed to put lights up on the Capitol grounds, Geddes sent an email to several event organizers, including Boise Pride, saying going forward, lighting of the Capitol would no longer be allowed. He wrote they had so many requests to light up the outside of the building, they couldn't accommodate them all. Quote, "We're becoming overwhelmed with applications, and if some are approved, all must be approved." Geddes wanted to give event organizers enough time to alter plans for the following years. He ended the email saying, "Thank you for your cooperation and for also helping retain the dignity of Idaho's most treasured building." So that meant for 2019, organizers had to bring in lights from outside of Boise and ask the public for help to do it, which they did.
Organizers with the Boise Pride Festival say the lights will go on next weekend, thanks to donations from the community, Hotbox Farms, and Albertsons. Pride Fest has reached their $7,500 fundraising goal. Organizers say they'll use the money to light the State House from across the street using high-intensity lights.
So in 2018, they were allowed to put the lights on the Capitol grounds. 2019, they were not. And apparently there were several other exceptions over the next few years. Boise Pride was allowed to set up those lights on the Capitol grounds, and that included last year. Then came the decision from the Department of Administration to not allow that exception this year, something they explained by saying, well, they've turned down multiple requests this year already, including Mental Health Month, National Stillbirth Prevention Day, a 4th of July event. They recognized there were exceptions made after that 2018 policy was in place, and it became tough to be objective when it came to deciding who was and who wasn't allowed to light up the Capitol. And they say they decided in May to enforce that 2018 policy. So no lights on the Capitol grounds for fear, I should say, of people tripping over them or for fire, or just damage in general. But where was that concern in the years when Boise Pride was allowed to set up lights on the Capitol grounds? It's a question asked by the organizers of the event, who say they've been counting on and budgeting for those lights to be on the grounds this year. So why the back and forth?
Back in 2018, we got the okay to do it, so we did. But in 2019, they said no, so we moved them across the street. 2020, they said it was okay, but then 2021, they said no. And then last year, they said it was okay.
So I can understand the confusion and kind of like the frustration in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the board member that has those conversations with this department said everything was in line to do it again this year. But then I believe he retired in April or so. And the interim director changed course on that. But we didn't get that memo till not that long ago. So that's kind of late notice. And it kind of puts us in a bind, especially when we're being told everything is looking one direction and we budget accordingly. And then kind of last minute, that's a lot of money to kind of change course, and you can't just shift buckets for something that big.
So in order to get the right LED lights with enough strength to shine from across the street, they have to be brought in from studios, Williamson said. And you can't just run down to Tate's Rents and pick them up. So in order to light up the Capitol, Boise Pride will have to pay more once again. So far, according to their fundraising page, they've raised about $410 of the $10,000 they need to cover the cost of that lighting. 34th Boise Pride Festival takes place September 8th, 9th, and 10th at Cecil D. Andrus Park, which is across from the Capitol in downtown Boise. Precipitation, police chief again, and poll workers. They're all part of today's 411 from around the 208. Here's Morgan Romero.
People in Ada County will not need a car wash anytime soon after the sky unleashed on the city last night. Maybe that's a tad dramatic, but it did rain a lot, turning streets like River Street in downtown Boise into an actual river. The thunderstorm was so intense, it put Ada County under a flood advisory. Most of that mess should be cleaned up today, and for the rest of the week, we should see sunny skies and smooth sailing. But we'll leave the rest of the forecasting up to our meteorologists.
It was short and it was long all in the same time.
Joe Huff is once again Nampa's police chief after his short but apparently long retirement. When he resigned back on July 17th, Huff said he wanted to take 30 to 45 days off to see if the grass was greener. Apparently, it wasn't.
You know what? I think I have a lot to give to the city.
The city of Nampa thought so too. Council brought him back as their police chief on Monday night. Did you know today is International Day for the Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its abolition? Neither did we. Less monumental markers, it's National Sponge Cake Day and National Ride the Wind Day, whatever that is. There are a lot of national days today, but the one Cassia County is celebrating is National Poll Worker Recruitment Day. They're trying to recruit you to help work the polls on Election Day. Head to their website, cassia.gov, to learn more about the roles, requirements, and how to sign up. And that's your 411 on the 208. I'm Morgan Romero.
Well, if you've kept any sort of eye on Hollywood, you probably know about the big writer strike that's going on. The brains behind Hollywood's blockbuster hits complain they're not getting their fair share of the profit pie with streaming and all that kind of stuff going on right now. Doesn't mean that entertainment stops completely, though, at least not in the theater. New plays are written and performed all the time, even here in Boise. For example, at the Boise Contemporary Theater. A playwright will write these plays, and at the BCT, well, they're making a concerted effort to expand their horizons when it comes to who's writing plays for them. This weekend marks the 3rd annual BIPOC Playwrights Festival, featuring work written and performed by Black and Indigenous people of color. Here's Andrew Bartline.
There's a saying in the Boise Contemporary Theater.
To provide a window so that our audience is allowed to see different stories being told.
Different?
You get what I'm saying? Yeah.
The rehearsal today's behind a door kept closed.
Even though I got 5 on it.
But the conversation tomorrow, they're hoping it's open.
Boom, boom, boom.
Bridging the Gap. It's the title of a new play penned by Ladarian Williams.
It deals with Black erasure and cultural appropriation through dance. You know, being from the South, you just learn to live with some of the ways.
My father.
This window
having
to a new story.
Or the environment they create do have lasting effects on us.
It's long known to Ladarian.
I love writing about the South. My play is based in my hometown. There's a lot of poetry in the mundane, if you will, and the way we speak, the way our food, our culture, religion, you know, like Christianity influence a lot of our way of life. So I really love to see that more on stages.
So coming out of this.
Before his shot at a Boise stage, Ladarian too was looking through windows.
I remember seeing like a posting about they were looking like for BIPOC playwrights.
It's a development opportunity.
Because a lot of theaters don't, they don't give me a chance to develop my plays. So
a rare development opportunity.
They invited me and we came running.
And he's not alone.
I heard the news in June.
Fellow playwright, Novid Parsi.
As a playwright, you have a script. You work for many months by yourself in a room with just you and your computer. But a play is supposed to be spoken aloud and performed live with people all in a room together. That's such a gift to be able to have this time.
Time Novid's using to confront the world.
If there's a play or a story about domestic violence and it's a white family, we just see that as a story about domestic violence. If it's a play about Middle Eastern family, that violence is seen in a very racialized, ethnic lens.
Because writers write about what they know.
There is a certain added layer to that as a Middle Eastern writer, for sure.
Consider the story beneath the story.
And now it's affecting his children.
Those realities
I really don't think the older generation
can be ignored behind a closed door.
Now we're stepping back into time.
But their art pushes back.
And we're both doing them both times?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It gives them value because they feel seen. Everybody wants to be seen. They want to feel seen and be heard and protected.
The BIPOC Playwrights Festival started in 2021 after the Boise Contemporary Theater says they earned a $30,000 grant. Their goal is to continue that program years into the future, and they just have 2 playwrights this year. They hope to get that up to 10 in the future. Both playwrights also directly saying, Brian, that the opportunity in general is very difficult to come across, to have like a whole week dedicated to developing plays, all the actors in the same place, the director in the same place. A lot of them flew talented from where they came from and said, these are my people, we're here working together on it. It's cool to be behind the scenes a little bit, see how it all works out.
Okay, so for the playwrights you spoke to today, when can anybody see what they're doing?
This weekend, and we'll have a link on our website at ktvb.com. I think it's like $10, $15. I'm sure there's different levels of tickets, but it is this weekend.
Awesome. All right, thank you very much, Andrew.
Some gorgeous photos from the last couple of days. We saw lots of double rainbows with lightning as the backdrop from that storm that tore across Boise yesterday. And a lot of you captured images of this. Thanks to Sandra for posting this in our Idaho Weather Watchers page. An ominous shelf cloud, also called the mothership cloud. And you can see why, right? Very ominous, but also really cool. Thanks, Sandra, for posting that picture for us. So over an inch of rain has fallen so far in Boise this month. That puts us now at the 7th wettest August all time. It doesn't take much. Remember, Boise's typical rainfall in the month of August is 0.17 of an inch. We saw nearly 1 inch yesterday in the City of Trees in many spots. The last time, by the way, we had an August with over an inch of rain was back in 2009 with 1.79 inches. So yes, it has been a little bit wet for this month. No rainfall coming at us today, no shelf clouds, and likely no double rainbows either, as we have lots of blue sky over the Treasure Valley, the Magic Valley, and the Wood River Valley. It's been a little bit cloudy in McCall today. Temperatures have been held down because of that, only 69 in McCall, while we've been into the mid-80s here in the lower elevations. We might still see a stray shower or storm in the Long Valley area through the rest of this evening. Then everything kind of dries out and the sunshine increases tomorrow, but the smoke will also increase. That's the unfortunate part here as we get that southwesterly flow. So a little bit of haze out there tomorrow, which might obscure the sun a touch, but still I think it'll be a really beautiful day. We'll be at 90 degrees tomorrow afternoon. We hold steady around 90 through the start of the weekend. Then the heat ramps up back into the mid-90s by next Monday.
From the start line, the course is hot.
It's not a race, remember? They're here to push limits.
Oh no, it's the other McLaren. 720S.
All kinds of limits.
Last year they raised $650,000 for the Hunger Coalition, just changing thousands of people's lives.
And this year, the Sun Valley Tour de Force raised even more, hundreds of thousands of dollars more. This is a race where people pay to drive their car as fast as they can along the highway there just outside of Sun Valley. How about $1 million going to the Hunger Coalition? That is amazing. The Hunger Coalition is a full-fledged food center to help produce food insecurity within Blaine County. It's the largest donation the Hunger Coalition has ever had, thanks to that one-day race back in July. All right, let's take a look at your comments for today. A lot of you had a lot of the same things to say about what's going on with the Nampa School District and the complaint against them being discriminatory against Hispanic students. Solution to this, they say, all schools should have a strict uniform dress code, says Judy in Nampa. Got a couple of those. Discrimination, discrimination, discrimination. Shame on the administration department. Here's where the ACLU needs to get involved. This is about the Capitol building and being lit up for Boise Pride Festival, which is coming up in September, and how they had to change their plans midstream because of that. This is from Dye. And the reason is, explain why we should allow any group to light up a public building. Public facilities should not take sides in any controversial issues. Gay pride, either pro or con, is controversial. It's not so much about that, it's about the late notice. They had planned to have the lights where they were underneath the building, and now they have to make other plans because they didn't find out until, well, late, they say. That's the issue here. We'll see you tomorrow.